She married the Alpha King as a substitute bride, unaware he could hear her every thought. Hello everyone. Before we step into today's story, I have one small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from our channel. It only takes a moment, it is completely free, and it is one of the best ways to support us as we continue bringing you dramatic, emotional stories filled with love, courage, and destiny. Your support truly means the world to us. And before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel and discovering who is joining us from around the world. Now, let's begin today's story. Please don't let him realize I'm not the bride he was promised. The thought struck King Cale Blackthorn so clearly that his hand froze inches from the ivory veil. Yet the young woman standing before him had not spoken. Alara Whitmore kept her eyes lowered beneath the delicate lace, willing her breathing to remain steady as hundreds of guests watched from the moonlit ceremonial hall. 12 hours earlier, she had been nobody's bride. She had been the forgotten Omega daughter who arranged flowers, balanced household accounts, and learned long ago that being useful was safer than being noticed. Then Seraphine, the woman promised to the Alpha King, disappeared before dawn. By sunset, Lady Vivian Whitmore had placed Seraphine's wedding gown in Alara's arms. You will take her place. Alara had stared at the silver-white fabric. He'll know. Then make certain he doesn't until the vows are complete. Refusal would disgrace House Whitmore, but Alara cared little for its reputation. What changed her answer were the frightened faces downstairs. Cooks, stable hands, servants, families whose livelihoods depended upon a royal agreement they had never helped make. So Alara had stepped into another woman's dress and entered a carriage bound for Night Vale Palace. Now she stood beneath a vaulted ceiling nearly 60 feet high while moonlight spilled through stained glass windows and painted silver. Wolves across the marble floor. At the altar waited the most feared alpha in the Northern Territories. Cale Blackthorn was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered beneath a formal black coat. His dark hair swept back from a face carved into severe, controlled lines. But his eyes unsettled her most. Gray, quiet, watchful. Not cruel, she thought. Lonely. Cale's expression changed. Barely. Just a tightening near his eyes. Alara swallowed. Why is he looking at me like that? Again, the words sounded inside his mind as distinctly as speech. Cale had spent 31 years surrounded by advisors, rivals, petitioners, and ambitious nobles. Never once had another person's thoughts entered his consciousness. His mind had always belonged entirely to him. Until her. He slowly lifted Alara's veil. Her pale face appeared beneath it, composed despite the fear brightening her blue eyes. Cale knew immediately. This was not Seraphine Whitmore. He had studied the royal portrait sent months ago. The woman before him was a stranger. Alara's heart hammered. Say something. Smile. Don't look guilty. And please, moon above, don't let him punish anyone downstairs for what my family did. Cale stared at her. She feared for servants before herself. Interesting. The officiant shifted nervously. Your Majesty? Cale could expose the deception with a sentence. Instead, he lowered his hand and asked quietly, Do you come before this crown willingly? Alara's breath caught. Yes, Your Majesty. No. The silent answer entered his mind immediately. Then another followed, softer and painfully sincere. But if someone must carry the consequences of my family's cowardice, let it be me. Cale's gaze sharpened. Alara mistook it for anger and straightened, refusing to shrink. For the first time that evening, something almost like wonder moved behind the Alpha King's guarded eyes. The kingdom believed the ceremony was joining him to the wrong bride. Cale was beginning to suspect something far older believed otherwise. The officiant waited, uncertain whether the ceremony should continue, while Alara stood beneath Cale's unreadable gaze and wondered how many seconds remained before everything collapsed. The silence inside the ceremonial hall seemed enormous. Hundreds of nobles watched from beneath silver banners, expecting a royal marriage. None of them knew the woman at the altar had spent the morning repairing household ledgers, while another woman's name waited on the marriage decree. Cale finally turned toward the officiant. "Continue." Alara nearly forgot to breathe. "Why?" The thought escaped before she could stop it. "He knows. He has to know." Cale heard every word. He kept his expression still, though questions crowded his own mind. Why could he hear her? Why only her? And why did her unspoken voice feel strangely familiar, like an echo returning from somewhere he had never been? The officiant recited the ancient promises of Nightvale, speaking of loyalty freely given and strength used in service rather than domination. Alara listened carefully. Those words surprised her. She had expected the laws of Alpha Kings to celebrate power. Instead, the oldest vow demanded restraint. A ruler who cannot govern himself has no right to govern others, she thought. Cale's eyes moved toward her. That sentence was almost identical to something his mother had told him as a child. Alara noticed his reaction and immediately worried she had made some mistake. "Stop staring at him. You are supposed to look calm. Unfortunately, he is much more intimidating from 3 feet away." The faintest hint of amusement touched Cale's face before disappearing. Alara blinked. Had the feared Alpha King almost smiled? The officiant presented 2 silver rings engraved with the royal crest. Cale took hers carefully. "Alara Whitmore," he said. Her heart stopped. Across the hall, Lady Vivian went pale. A murmur moved through the guests. "He knows my name. Of course he knows. This is over." Alara lifted her chin anyway. If humil. By sunrise, Cale had learned almost nothing about the sacred echo, and somehow that troubled him more than learning nothing at all. Elder Rowan had found the name in an index written nearly 4 centuries earlier, but the pages it referenced were missing from the royal archive. Someone had removed them carefully enough to leave no explanation behind. Cale ordered Rowan to continue searching and returned upstairs before the palace awakened. Alara was already awake. She stood beside a tall window in the eastern apartments, watching servants prepare the courtyard below while morning light softened the distant pine-covered hills. She had slept badly, but exhaustion was easier to manage than uncertainty. When a young maid entered carrying breakfast, her hands shook so badly that a porcelain cup nearly slipped from the tray. "Forgive me, Your Majesty." Alara caught the cup before it fell. "Nothing happened. You do not need to apologize for something that did not happen." The maid looked stunned. Alara smiled and helped steady the tray. Cale witnessed the exchange from the doorway. More importantly, he heard what Alara did not say. "She is terrified of this palace. Someone taught these people that mistakes are more dangerous than honesty." Cale entered, and the maid immediately stiffened. "Leave us," he said, then noticed Alara's concern. "You are not in trouble," he added to the maid. Her relief was immediate. Alara looked at him differently. He heard the thought a moment later. He listened. Maybe that matters more than being feared. Cale wished it did not affect him. It did. Later that morning, Alara accompanied him to the petition chamber, where nobles and citizens brought disputes before the crown. A palace guard named Thomas Hale stood accused of taking medicine from a royal supply room without authorization. "The law is clear," Lord Garrick Vane said from the council table. "Dismiss him immediately." Thomas lowered his head. Alara remained silent beside Cale, exactly where royal custom required her to stand. But her thoughts were anything but silent. Ask why. Everyone keeps saying what he did, but nobody has asked why he did it. Cale glanced at Thomas. "Why did you take the medicine?" Garrick frowned. Thomas looked startled. "My daughter has been sick for 3 weeks, Your Majesty. The village clinic had none left. I intended to replace everything after payday." The room changed. What had sounded like theft suddenly carried the weight of desperation. Alara thought carefully. Mercy without wisdom can become favoritism. But punishment without understanding becomes laziness wearing the clothes of justice. Cale almost turned toward her. Instead, he addressed Thomas. "You will repay the supply through reasonable deductions from your wages. You will keep your position. The royal physician will examine your daughter today." Thomas stared at him in disbelief. Garrick did not hide his displeasure. "Your Majesty, this creates a dangerous precedent. Then let the precedent be that this court learns the facts before passing judgment." Silence followed. Alara lowered her eyes, hiding a small smile. Kale heard no triumph in her thoughts, only relief for a child she had never met. That disturbed him in a way ambition never could. By evening, Kale realized he had begun listening for her thoughts before she entered a room. Then, during dinner, Alara looked toward him and thought something so simple that he forgot the conversation around him. "I wonder who listens to him when he is the one who needs to be heard." Kale slowly set down his glass. All his life, people had wondered what they could receive from a king. The substitute bride was the first person who had silently wondered what the king might need. That night, Kale discovered the silence had boundaries. Alara was reading beside the fireplace in the Eastern Library, less than 20 feet from his desk, and her thoughts reached him as clearly as spoken words. She wondered why royal histories recorded every battle but so few acts of mercy. She wondered whether the servants were permitted to borrow books. She wondered why Kale had been staring at the same page for 10 minutes. He almost smiled. Then she left to return a book to another room. Her thoughts softened with every step. At 40 feet, they became faint. Beyond the stone corridor, they vanished completely. Kale stared toward the doorway. For the first time since their wedding, the silence felt wrong. Over the next several days, he tested the strange connection without revealing it. Distance weakened the sacred echo. Strong emotion strengthened it. Yet there seemed to be another rule he could not understand. When Alara deliberately guarded her feelings, he heard almost nothing. When compassion or fear broke through her defenses, her thoughts crossed distances that should have made hearing impossible. Elder Rowan found no explanation. "The oldest records are incomplete," he told Kale. "Whatever this gift was, someone wanted it forgotten." Kale disliked mysteries that had been deliberately buried. Alara, meanwhile, was beginning to notice something different. The king everyone described as cold remembered the name of Thomas Hale's daughter. He asked whether the medicine had helped. He ordered books from the royal library made available to palace workers during their free hours after overhearing Alara ask a librarian why knowledge required permission from rank. Yet he never claimed the ideas as hers. He simply acted. Maybe kindness is not new to him, she thought one evening. Maybe he only forgot he was allowed to show it. Kale heard that from across the dining room and looked away before she could catch the emotion in his face. Hours later, the palace had gone quiet beneath a winter storm when a voice tore through his sleep. "Please do not lock the door." Kale sat upright. Alara was nowhere near him. "Please, I will be quiet. Just do not leave me there again." Her thoughts were fractured by fear. Kale crossed nearly 200 feet of corridor before realizing what should have been impossible. The sacred echo was growing stronger with distance, not weaker. He stopped outside Alara's chamber. No guards were inside. No danger waited beyond the door. Only silence and the faint sound of uneven breathing. His hand reached for the handle, then stopped. Power had opened every door in Kale's life. Tonight, he chose not to use it. He knocked. Alara awakened with a gasp. "Who is there?" "Kale." A pause. "May I come in?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes." He entered only after hearing permission. Alara sat near the window wrapped in a robe over her nightclothes. Embarrassed by tears, she quickly wiped away. Kale remained several feet from her. "You were having a nightmare." Her face tightened. "How did you know?" For one dangerous second, neither moved. Kale could have told her everything. Instead, fear entered her thoughts again. If he knows what happened in that locked room, he will know why I agreed to replace Seraphine. Kale felt the mystery shift beneath his feet. Alara had not simply been pressured into the marriage. Something had happened before it. Something she still feared. "You do not have to tell me anything tonight," he said quietly. Alara looked up. Kale stepped toward the open doorway rather than toward her. "And no door in this palace will ever be locked against your will." Her expression changed. The fear did not disappear, but something gentler rose beside it. Trust. At that exact moment, far below them, Elder Rowan opened a sealed wooden case hidden behind a false wall in the archive. Inside lay a silver tablet bearing the same ancient symbol now beginning to glow faintly beneath Cale's sleeve. By the end of the week, Elara had become dangerous without realizing it. Not because she commanded soldiers or challenged the council, but because people had begun to believe the palace could listen. A kitchen worker received wages that had been delayed for months. 2 farming families were granted a hearing over taxes they could not afford after a failed harvest. The village clinic received additional medicine after Cale discovered that royal supplies were sitting unused in storage. Each change was small. Together, they unsettled men who had grown comfortable with silence. Lord Garrick Vane noticed first. "The crown is becoming sentimental," he said during the morning council. Cale remained seated at the head of the long oak table. Listening before making a decision is not sentiment. Garrick glanced toward Elara, who sat several feet away reviewing a petition. "Of course, I merely wonder when royal policy began requiring the opinions of an Omega." Elara raised her eyes but said nothing. Cale heard the thought immediately. If my idea is wrong, challenge the idea. If the only argument against it is who I am, then there was never an argument at all. Cale leaned back. Then challenge the policy, Lord Vane. Explain why unused medicine should remain locked away while citizens need it. Garrick's confidence faltered. "That is not what I meant." "Then say what you mean." Silence settled over the table. Elara looked down again, but Cale caught the smallest trace of amusement in her thoughts. "He is learning." Cale almost answered aloud. That afternoon, the palace gates opened for an unexpected carriage bearing the Whitmore crest. Elara saw it from an upstairs window, and every bit of warmth left her face. Seraphine stepped out. She wore a deep blue traveling cloak and carried herself with the confidence of someone returning to reclaim something misplaced. Lady Vivian followed behind her. Elara's fingers tightened around the windowsill. She came back. Cale heard the thought from across the room. Beneath it came another, colder with memory. "Of course she came back after I survived the part she was afraid to face." Within an hour, the royal court assembled. Seraphine stood before the throne and lowered her head. "Your Majesty, I was deceived. My sister took my place." Elara felt the accusation move through the chamber like winter air. Lady Vivian said nothing. That silence told Elara everything. They had chosen their story. "She stole my marriage," Seraphine continued. Cale's gaze shifted to Elara. He already knew enough to expose the lie, but Elara's thoughts reached him first. "Do not save me by destroying everyone attached to our house." The stable families knew nothing. The cooks knew nothing. The children knew nothing. Cale's jaw tightened. Even now, she was thinking about people who could offer her nothing. Garrick rose slowly. "If the royal agreement named Seraphine Whitmore, then this marriage may have no legal standing." Whispers filled the court. Elara stood alone beneath hundreds of watching eyes, but she did not lower her head. Cale wanted to end the matter with a command. Then her thought stopped him. A king cannot bend the law simply because the truth hurts someone he cares about. Cale looked at her, suddenly understanding the lesson hidden inside her silence. She did not need him to place her above justice. She needed him to make justice worthy of trust. Before he could speak, Elder Rowan appeared at the rear doors, breathless from the archive. In his hands rested an ancient silver tablet. His eyes found Cale's sleeve, where the hidden mark had begun to glow again. "Your Majesty," Rowan said, his voice trembling with wonder. "The woman standing beside you may not be the bride named in your treaty, but according to something far older than this kingdom, she may be the only bride the crown was ever meant to hear." The court remained silent as Elder Rowan carried the silver tablet toward the throne. Even Lord Garrick seemed unwilling to interrupt him. The object was no larger than a dinner plate, darkened by centuries, with a crescent symbol carved around a pair of overlapping circles. Cale recognized the shape immediately. Beneath his sleeve, the mark on his wrist had the same design. Elara watched him carefully. "He knows something. Something he has not told me." The thought carried no accusation yet, only growing unease. Cale looked toward Rowan. "Explain." Rowan placed the tablet on the council table. This was hidden behind a false wall in the oldest section of the royal archive. The inscription predates Night Vale by at least 300 years. Garrick frowned. And we are supposed to let an artifact decide royal law? No, Rowan replied. The law decides the marriage dispute. History may explain why something impossible is happening around it. Alara's pulse quickened. Cale remained motionless. Rowan traced the ancient markings without touching them. The first rulers wrote of a gift called the Sacred Echo. It was not ordinary thought-hearing. According to this inscription, the crown could sometimes hear what it calls the soul beneath the spoken word. Alara looked toward Cale. For one terrible second, her mind became completely quiet. Then understanding arrived. You can hear me. Cale felt those 4 words more sharply than anything she had ever thought. Alara stepped back. Every thought, every frightened thing I never said? Cale wanted to answer, but Rowan continued. The gift was extraordinarily rare. It appeared only when a royal bearer encountered someone connected to an ancient covenant. Seraphine stared at Alara. Lady Vivian's face had lost its color. Garrick folded his arms. Convenient. Rowan ignored him. There is more. The old texts never call this person queen, Luna, or promised bride. They use another name. His voice softened. The silent bride. Alara almost laughed from disbelief. There is nothing silent about my mind. Despite the tension, Cale nearly smiled. Rowan turned the tablet. Along its lower edge, several words remained visible. When the crown hears the silent bride, the broken covenant shall. He stopped. Alara waited. So did everyone else. Shall what? Cale asked. Rowan looked up. We do not know. The remainder is missing. A murmur spread through the chamber. Rowan explained that the royal records described an event called the Severing, after which references to the Sacred Echo disappeared. Entire pages had been removed. Names had been erased. Someone centuries ago had not merely forgotten this history. Someone had tried to bury it. Cale looked at the tablet, then at Alara. Suddenly the substitute marriage felt less like an accident and more like a door opened by hands they could not see. But Alara was focused on something more immediate. She met Cale's eyes. Is it true? He could have hidden behind ceremony. He did not. Yes. Hurt crossed her face. You heard my thoughts? Only yours. Since when? Cale answered quietly. Since I lifted your veil. Alara looked away. Cale heard nothing now. Somehow her silence frightened him more than her anger would have. Garrick seized the moment. Then this changes nothing. Sacred legend cannot repair a fraudulent treaty. The council must determine whether Alara Whitmore has any lawful place beside the throne. Cale rose, but Alara spoke first. Then determine it. Everyone turned toward her. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. I will not ask the king to place me above the law because an ancient tablet calls me special. Cale watched her with quiet astonishment. Alara faced the council. If this sacred echo means anything, let us discover the truth. But do not confuse destiny with entitlement. Rowan lowered his eyes in respect. Then the silver tablet gave a faint pulse of light. A second symbol appeared beneath the first, one Rowan had never seen before. 2 circles. Not one mind reaching into another, but 2 turning toward each other. And beneath them 3 ancient words slowly became visible. The echo returns. The 3 words on the tablet should have answered something. Instead, they created another question. The echo returns. Elder Rowan stared at the glowing inscription until its light slowly faded back into silver. Lord Garrick recovered first. Ancient riddles do not change the treaty. His voice carried across the chamber. The agreement names Seraphine Whitmore. Alara Whitmore entered this marriage under another woman's place. Whatever happened afterward cannot erase how it began. Alara felt every eye turn toward her. This time, Cale heard no thought behind her expression. Only silence. Garrick continued. Under royal law, the council may declare the union invalid. If His Majesty refuses that ruling, the matter becomes a challenge to the authority of the crown itself. Cale stood. The room quieted instantly. He could end the argument by invoking royal privilege. He could declare Ilara his chosen mate and dare anyone to object. A week earlier, that might have been his answer. Then he looked at her and remembered every choice others had made on her behalf. Her family had chosen her sacrifice. Seraphine had chosen her escape. Lady Vivian had chosen Ilara's silence. Even Kale had chosen to keep listening to thoughts Ilara never knowingly gave him. He would not become another person deciding her life while calling it protection. The council will not decide this alone, Kale said. Garrick frowned. Your Majesty? Kale stepped down from the throne until he stood several feet from Ilara. You entered this palace because others placed you here. Ilara searched his face. Yes. Then I will not use the crown to keep you here. Shock moved through the court. Lady Vivian whispered something to Seraphine. Kale ignored them. If the marriage is dissolved, House Whitmore will answer only for actions proven under law. No servant, worker, child, or dependent will be punished for decisions they did not make. Ilara's breath caught. He had remembered the people she was protecting. And me? She asked. Kale's voice softened. You will choose. Something inside Ilara shifted. For most of her life, choice had been presented as a privilege reserved for stronger people. Kale was offering it when doing so could cost him politically. If I leave, she asked, you leave freely. If I stay, you stay because you want to, not because of a treaty, not because of the sacred echo, not because anyone calls it destiny. Garrick stepped forward. The kingdom requires certainty. Kale looked at him. Then let the kingdom learn that certainty purchased with another person's freedom is merely control wearing ceremonial robes. Rowan's expression softened. Ilara felt tears threaten and refused to let them fall. She searched for the thought Kale would surely hear. Nothing came. The inside of her mind felt strangely still. Kale's face changed. He looked toward her as though a familiar sound had suddenly disappeared. Ilara noticed. What is it? He waited. Nothing. For days, her thoughts had reached him through walls, corridors, even across nearly 200 feet during her nightmare. Now she stood less than 6 feet away, and he heard only the quiet breathing of the court. I cannot hear you, he said. Ilara stared at him. Rowan moved closer to the tablet. The second symbol had vanished. Perhaps the echo was never meant to survive without consent, he murmured. Kale felt the meaning settle heavily inside him. The sacred echo had awakened when Ilara had no choice. The moment Kale truly gave that choice back, the power disappeared. Ilara looked at the open doors behind him. Freedom waited only a few steps away. Kale moved aside. He did not reach for her. He did not command her. He simply cleared the path. Ilara walked toward the doors. At the threshold, she stopped and looked back. Kale could no longer know what she felt. For the first time since their wedding, he would have to trust whatever she chose to tell him. I need to know who I am when nobody is choosing for me, she said. Kale nodded once. Then find out. Ilara stepped through the doors, and the Alpha King let her go. For the first time since the wedding, Kale discovered how loud silence could become. 3 days passed after Ilara left Nightvale Palace, and the sacred echo did not return. He attended council meetings, reviewed petitions, and walked the same stone corridors where her thoughts had once reached him before her footsteps did. Now there was nothing. No quiet observations. No unexpected questions. No gentle voice wondering whether a law was just simply because it was old. He had believed losing the gift would bring relief. Instead, it revealed how much he had depended upon something Ilara had never knowingly given him. Elder Rowan found him one evening in the Eastern Library. You could order her back, Rowan said. Kale closed the book before him. Then everything she taught me would mean nothing. Nearly 20 miles away, Ilara stayed in a small cottage belonging to an elderly former Whitmore housekeeper named Margaret Ellis. There were no royal banners there, no servants waiting outside her door, and no family telling her what duty required. For 3 mornings, Ilara woke and asked herself the same question. What do I want? The answer refused to come easily. Freedom felt strange when someone had spent years training you to confuse obedience with goodness. On the fourth morning, she visited the nearby village clinic and found shelves nearly empty after an early winter illness swept through several families. Alara spent the day organizing supplies, writing requests, and helping frightened parents understand which medicines were available. Nobody called her queen. Nobody called her substitute. Nobody cared whose dress she had worn at the altar. They only cared that she listened. That evening, Alara finally understood something. She did not need a crown to become valuable. She had been valuable before anyone noticed. Back at Nightvale, Kale reached the same truth from the opposite direction. Without Alara's thoughts guiding him, every decision became harder. Not because he lacked judgment, but because he could no longer borrow hers without asking. So he began asking others. He invited farmers into meetings once reserved for nobles. He questioned healers before changing medical policy. He asked servants which palace rules made their work unnecessarily difficult. Lord Garrick called it weakness. Kale called it learning. On the fifth day, Elder Rowan brought him another discovery. The sacred echo may not have vanished, he said. The oldest translation suggests it has changed. Kale looked up. Rowan placed a copied inscription on the desk. The first stage is hearing. The second requires something more difficult. What? Mutual consent. Kale stared at the words. Then I cannot restore it. Perhaps that is the point. Meanwhile, Alara received a sealed letter from the royal council. The hearing to dissolve her marriage would take place the following morning. No command accompanied it. No request from Kale. She was free to stay away. Alara sat beside Margaret's fireplace with the letter resting in her hands. She remembered Kale standing aside at the court doors. She remembered his promise that no door would ever be locked against her will. Then she remembered something harder. He had listened to thoughts she believed were private and had waited too long to tell her. That truth still hurt. Love could not erase it. Trust could not be rebuilt by pretending nothing had happened. By dawn, Alara knew what she needed to do. At Nightvale Palace, Kale entered the great hall prepared to accept the council's ruling. He would not summon her. He would not claim destiny as an excuse. If Alara never returned, he would carry that consequence without turning his regret into her cage. Lord Garrick rose and began reading the petition of dissolution. Then the enormous doors opened. Cold morning light spilled across the marble floor. Alara stood in the entrance wearing neither Seraphine's silver wedding gown nor the colors of House Whitmore. She wore a simple deep green dress she had chosen herself. Kale rose slowly. He heard no thoughts. For once, he had no hidden truth to rely upon. Alara walked toward him until only a few feet remained between them. I am still angry with you, she said. Kale nodded. You have every right to be. And I do not know whether I can trust you again. Then I will earn whatever trust you choose to give. Alara studied him, and Kale waited without knowing what came next. Strangely, that uncertainty felt more sacred than hearing her mind ever had. Alara's words remained between them, honest and unfinished. Kale could have promised that he would never disappoint her again, but he had learned enough to know that perfect promises were often easier than difficult truth. I cannot change what I did, he said. I can only change what I do next. Alara held his gaze. Then start by letting me speak for myself. Kale stepped aside. The floor is yours. Lord Garrick looked displeased as Alara turned toward the council. I came to this palace the first time because my family decided my life was expendable. I wore another woman's dress, stood beneath another woman's name, and believed sacrifice was the same thing as virtue. Lady Vivian lowered her eyes. Seraphine remained silent. Alara continued. I know better now. Sacrifice has value only when it is freely chosen. So I will not ask you to preserve a marriage created through deception. Garrick immediately reached for the dissolution document. Then the matter is settled. No, Alara said. The single word stopped him. She turned toward Kale. Because I am not here to preserve that marriage. I am here to choose a new one. Kale did not move. Alara stepped closer. The woman who arrived here was a substitute. The woman standing here now is not. Her voice softened. I choose to stay, Kale. Not because you are king. Not because an ancient prophecy tells me to. I choose you because when you finally understood that loving someone means giving them freedom, you opened the door. Kale's composure nearly broke. And if I ever become that door's lock? Then I will remind you who taught you to open it. A quiet laugh moved through the chamber, gentle enough to release the tension. Even Rowan smiled. Kale extended his hand but stopped before touching hers. Alara understood the question hidden in the gesture. She placed her hand in his. Warmth flashed beneath their joined palms. The mark on Kale's wrist illuminated beneath his sleeve, and a matching silver pattern appeared on Alara's wrist. Rowan inhaled sharply. The second circle. The ancient tablet on the council table began to glow. Kale waited for Alara's familiar inner voice. Nothing came. Instead, Alara suddenly looked at him with startled eyes. A voice had entered her mind. His voice. Would rather lose the crown than become another cage around you. Alara's breath caught. Kale had not spoken. I heard you, she whispered. His eyes widened. What? Your thought. Rowan hurried toward the tablet. New words were appearing beneath the old inscription. The sacred echo was never meant to belong to the crown alone, he said. It was meant to become mutual. Kale looked at Alara, understanding at last. The first form of the gift had been incomplete. Power allowed one person to hear. Trust allowed both to be heard. Beneath their feet, a deep sound rolled through the palace, not threatening, but ancient, like stone remembering how to move. Everyone turned toward the northern wall. A narrow seam appeared between two enormous marble panels that had seemed solid for generations. Slowly, they separated, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Above it, letters emerged beneath centuries of dust. Rowan read them aloud. The First Covenant. Garrick went pale. What is down there? Rowan shook his head. No living record says. Alara looked at Kale. For once, neither could hear the other's thoughts. They did not need to. Kale offered his hand again. Alara took it by choice. Behind them stood a kingdom beginning to question everything it believed about power, rank, and destiny. Before them waited a secret older than the throne itself. Alara had entered Night Vale as a replacement for someone considered more worthy. Now an ancient door had opened only after she stopped being anyone's replacement at all. And somewhere beyond the darkness below, something that had been silent for centuries seemed to recognize that the true covenant had finally returned.